Hello, hello, K2H. So as we continue this highlighting of AAPI Heritage Month and celebrating all things Asian American and all things Asian, I think today's focus is a really exciting one. We're bringing it into martial arts and the roots of the histories of this art form and how it serves as a very important form of self-defense. It's also a very exciting genre in films. If you've ever watched Kung Fu films, which I have grown up with, it is something that digs deep into the Chinese culture that we're going to hopefully unpack a little bit by these two gentlemen who have just created and published a book about combat, and it's called Combat Chum-Kyu. I don't know how you say it in English because I think of it in Chinese. Chum-Kyu. I'll let Paul explain that. But first, let me introduce our two wonderful guests. I have Paul Chu, who is a real estate broker, actually, and doing a lot of things that I had no idea all this time that he was a martial arts guru. And I'll let him explain a little bit more about his background and training. But let me introduce my other guest is Greg Tupper, who's also been training and teaching for many years. And what's really funny is both of you guys have known each other for over 30 years, as I understand, all the way back in the Silicon Valley era. You guys are in different fields. You're not in any form of athletic profession. One's a marketing guy, one's a software engineering guy. You guys come together with a mutual passion, and you've developed and you've shared this process of developing a very important skill set that you want to share in this book. So welcome to both of you, Greg and Paul, for coming on to K2H first.
Thank you.
So let's start off by having you both introduce a little bit about yourselves and what you want us to know and how this book came about.
Okay, Greg. All right. Well, my name is Greg Tupper. I am ninth generation from the founder of Wing Chun, which is a style that most people know Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee studied from Yip Man, and my instructor studied from Yip Man. And so I was his inside student, and I've been doing this for 50 years. And so what I've tried to do with my books, I've written 7 books now. What I've tried to do with my books is preserve this the way it was a long time ago with all of these insiders. It became a very popular thing because of Bruce Lee. But what we're doing is how it used to be. And what we're trying to preserve is how it used to be before it became so commercial. And,
so you're saying there's a difference between what it used to be and how it's being treated today.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Try to do it in a nice way because people are trying to make a living out of that. Paul and I don't need to make a living out of it. We're doing this to preserve something very sacred that we don't want to see go away.
Is it kind of like yoga, how it's kind of transformed into this trendy lifestyle thing where we're missing and losing the origins and the actual kind of reasons for it and practices? Would you say?
Well, it's like
let's introduce Paul.
No. That's okay. The Chinese, a lot of time they say, okay, I'm not going to teach you 100%, right? If I'm going to teach you 100%, what if you're going to use it against me or something? So they retain maybe 10%, so 90%. And after a few generations, that 90% basically get into, 60, 70%. I think that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that people just don't remember. So, I learned it a long time ago. If I have to teach it to somebody else, I don't remember what is said. But Greg is very meticulous, and that's one of the reasons why. I look at his note. Whatever he learned, he wrote it down, and that it's really a journey to go back and look at his notes and say, "Wow, you did that 50 years ago, and this is good," And that's how we actually do this exploration together.
But both of you had met in California, and your training was in California. Did you not go back to Hong Kong or China or anywhere else to train?
Well, it's a deal. It's like, we both work in the Silicon Valley, and then you ask the question, two people in a different field, but we're in the same company. We're in a high-tech startup. I was the marketing guy, and he was the technical guy. And when we met, basically, I was beating up on engineering and say, hey, I need the product, give it to me, right? And then Greg was saying, no, you know, and then he's like, oh, you know, this is like a trunk of a tree. If you, you know, you want me to give you the branches because, you know, I sold it to a customer. He said, no, you know, you're not going to make me move because I'm going to complete the trunk of the tree before I give it to you. And we were like, you know, who is this guy? You know, and then during the conversation, I kind of realized that, you know, he is kind of a martial artist too, right? You know, somehow, you know, you kind of get the feeling. And then we get talking and say, oh, Wailo, you know, it's a you know, white guy, no England, come on, you know. And then we're thinking, wow, this guy is good, you know. And then you know, we get to like, you know, getting together and then, you know, work out together. But then after that, I went back to Hong Kong. And then I went back to Hong Kong for about 20 years. And then we kind of lost, you know, touch. I mean, back and forth, we go back. But then maybe about 15 years ago, I started coming over here again. And then every time I come over here, I would stop by and you know, meet up with Greg and we work out together. He taught me a lot of stuff and say, wow, this is really good stuff. You know, so we continue this journey together.
In fact, we still, I live in Carmel,
okay.
and he lives here, and we put on FaceTime and we do the dummy together, and you know, we work out together. We go through the notes and go, well, wait a minute, here is that really towards the human potential in fighting? You know, did I make a mistake in my notes here? And sometimes we find a mistake where, oh, this meant that, or the Chinese, you know, I try to explain to him what this is, you know, and I'll give him a Chinese word, you know, and we'll go back and forth on it, back and forth. And finally he'll go, oh, you mean, you know, in such a way that he has a right tonal inflection, because I don't know Cantonese very well, but I know a lot of Chinese terms that I have kind of a Chinglish type of, you know what I'm saying? I don't pronounce it right. You know, like it bongs out the wing hand, right? You know, but I could be saying, I could call somebody's mother a horse because both are mop, right? You know, and so.
That's great. And that's great that during COVID, you're able to, you know, have these virtual
workout every week, every Tuesday we meet up and, you know, we talk for, you know, a couple of hours and, you know.
See, it just goes to show, you know, you can transcend this kind of lack of physical space to still train and push through and develop and right and process things. So that's really great.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about, before we get to the origins of Wing Chun, which I'm really fascinated about, just back up a little bit. Tell us how you got into martial arts to begin with. Was it like, Paul, did you watch Kung Fu films growing up? Was it something that you were fascinated with before? Greg, I mean, like, where was the inspiration? There's got to have been something that lit up that idea in your head.
Yeah, for me, my mom, when I was 16 years old, sent me to a judo school because I was little, you know, and she was, you know, wanted me to be able to protect myself. Little did she know my spirit was already well enough. Yeah, I have a kind of a fighting spirit. So, you know, but nonetheless, I was interested in it. It wasn't very much of it in the United States back in the 60s, late 60s, you know. And so I took judo, and then I went away to college. In the process, I've studied 8 styles of martial arts, and became a Hapkido instructor, which is extremely effective. And I was and still am, but don't tell anybody, I'm an undefeated fighter. Okay. Whoa. I mean, I've been in a lot of fights. And but now I'm an old man, so don't tell anybody because I don't want to deal with it.
Okay, K2H listeners, we're not saying anything. Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, when I took judo, I realized there was something instinctual there because the 5th degree black belt came to teach the class, and so he had a black belt throw me, and the guy was tall, you know, and he did a type of throw where he put his leg out like a table and he threw me from way up in the air. I came crashing down and I landed on my feet and threw him, and you know, it just happened by accident. It's like, whoa, there he goes, you know. And so this guy was so blown away that a beginner could do that to a black belt and it was an accident, my weight just happened to go right. And so he taught me the rest of the day, the rest of the class he spent with me and taught me took me through several levels of judo. Then when I went away to study karate and stuff like that, I studied different styles and then had my own Hapkido school. And along towards probably I don't remember how long ago, but anyway, I saw Bruce Lee's movie and I was already had my own school in Hapkido, and something about how he moved and his spirit. You know how sometimes you can feel something from somebody and you just feel like you're doing it. You feel it. You can't explain it. You can't understand it, and if you tell anybody, they think you're nuts.
No. Every time I used to watch Kung Fu films growing up, I would leave the theater feeling like I could kick ass. It's weird.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
You have that same feeling?
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
That sent me on a quest of I need to find out how this guy learned to do this stuff. And so I moved to San Francisco. I just up and left and moved to San Francisco. And I had a Hapkido student that came down and moved down with me after I moved there, and I made him a partner the way I made Paul a partner, and the way you get ahead in martial arts is you find somebody to teach you while you teach them, and both of you can trust each other not to hurt each other, but you go at it with everything,
Wow.
but yet you are careful to protect them. But if you find a hole, you're still working,
Okay.
It's bad. It's really bad.
That was a bad. All right. Thank you for sharing. Paul, what's your story about your introduction to martial arts?
I grew up in Hong Kong, right? And in the 60s, there was way before, even Bruce Lee and so on. And martial art is this thing, right? You're in high school, you're always into this, fights and stuff like that. So you have to learn to protect yourself. And I think most of the male students at that time would, take up some sort of martial art.
Really? It was kind of common? Oh.
Yeah, in the 60s, right? And then I took some, I would say that about 50% of my class learned some sort of martial art. And at that time, there was a choice, Wing Chun, Bak Mei, Choi Li Fat, Siu Lam, Hong Kun, and all that kind of stuff. So I study white brow, right? What do you call
white
it?
Brow?
Yeah, Bak Mei.
What is that? Well, that was an actual school, like a style?
Yeah, that's a style, Bak Mei,
Wow.
Bak Mei Do Yan and all that kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
I learned that for a while. And then I switched to, Taekwondo, I switched to Tai Chi, for a long time. And this is kind of a regret on my part too, because, I think Wing Chun is the best, right? And at that time, Ip Man was still alive. Our Si Gong, Wang Sun Leung, was still alive. I could have studied from these guys, but I did not. I kind of took the, whatever. I took all these different styles. And then finally, and then even when I went back to Hong Kong, I studied Tai Chi for about 10 years. And, Tai Chi is good, it's good for, physically improving your all that stuff.
Yeah.
But at least it will take you a long time to learn how to fight in Tai Chi, right? Whereas Wing Chun is very practical. Wing Chun is like a 6-month Wing Chun guy can fight,
Really?
So yeah. So that's why I say, well, I'm going to come back to Wing Chun. And then I started training and all that kind of stuff. And then of course get hooked up with Greg, and that's how I got into Wing Chun again.
Interesting. So both of you had explored all these different styles. Is that something that is confusing or conflicting, when you have different ways of thinking and what do you do? I mean, how do you approach it and accept that new style? And then what do you do? Push out the other one and retrain your brain? How does that work with all these different styles? And what does that mean to have different styles?
We had a discussion on that yesterday, and I said, hey, I am really, again, regretful that I took all the different style because a lot of people, would say, wow, this is good. This move in Taekwondo is good. Oh, this move is excellent. I want to learn it. But every style has its characteristic, and every style, even for me, for us, right? We say, hey, there's so much more in Wing Chun that we need to explore. So instead of going wide, I think to me and my advice to other people would also say that go deep. Whatever the style is, Taekwondo, Tai Chi, whatever. They all exist for a reason. And, a lot of people just kind of, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. No, go deep. It's kind of.
That sounds very philosophical. Gotta unpack that. You know what we're gonna do? Because we just kind of gave a little teaser of what this martial arts world is and how you got into it. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's enter and explain the origins of Wing Chun, and maybe you can unpack a little the beauty behind it and how this has become like your life and world. So everyone, don't go away. I'm talking to Paul and Greg about the martial arts world of Wing Chun. Welcome back, K2H. You are listening to Quack Talk. I'm here talking to Paul Chu and Greg Tupper about this new book that they've come up with called Combat Tum-Kyu, which I will let Paul kind of unpack a little bit. But Paul and Greg, you are really kind of, it's very interesting. So I'm going to just throw it out there. You are both not spring chickens, but you've had this extensive training, and you're talking about your youth coming out and loving this art form of martial arts and training. And so let's go back into the kind of the art form of Wing Chun specifically. You did, Greg, mention that it was something that I think Bruce Lee was one of the inspirations to that, beautiful art form. Can you explain what it means? What is Wing Chun? How did it start? And how do we unpack it?
Well, when you have studied something your whole life, it's like been a core thing. You, especially if you've explored a lot of different stuff before you found something that seemed like a tuning fork that was ringing the right tone. What Wing Chun turned out to be was, it was invented by a woman, Ng Mui. And
what era, what time period are we talking about?
Talking 1800s.
Yeah, probably like the Qing dynasty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ng Mui was, one of the Xiu Lam, the five people from Shaolin Temple. Yeah. They, people, the Qing Bing, they burned down the Shaolin Temple, and 5 of them escaped, and Ng Mui was one of them.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And she was also a champion of the Mui Fa pile. And that's a bunch of telephone poles. I mean, flat ground wasn't enough for her. She fought in 3 dimensions on different sized poles and was world champion.
Mui Fa Zhong.
Yeah, she was a serious human being. And so after she escaped the Shaolin Temple, she, had a very meditative type of life. And she consolidated everything that she'd learned by cutting out all the unessentials, and what came out of that is a body of knowledge that there was no style or anything yet, but she found out that a soybean cake maker named Wing Chun, Yim Wing Chun, I don't know, I apologize for my pronunciation. But some guy was terrorizing her, right? And so Ng Mui found out about this, and she taught her Wing Chun so that she could protect herself against this guy. And that's how the thing got started. And it got passed down from generation to generation. What we're studying here isn't so much a style of something, or a animal style, or say people style, but it's about the human potential in fighting. And I have never, in all of my studies, found anything that got close to covering the human potential in fighting. And so,
you think because we get caught up with styles, we get caught up with it the way like film kind of misrepresents or kind of like turns it into, oh, this is this claw, and we get consumed with the outer representation of the art form.
And a lot of people will say, oh, Taekwondo is better than this, MMA is better than this, whatever. It's not really the style or whatever. It's you, the guy, right? A Shaolin, a Hong Kong guy beat up a Wing Chun guy. Well, his Wing Chun is not as good as the Hong Kong guy. That's it. But doesn't mean that Hong Kong is better than Wing Chun. So it's individualized, that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and different uses too.
Yeah.
MMA is a sport with a referee. What this is about is how do you protect yourself, in a violent confrontation where survival is the situation. No referees, nobody's going to help you. That's what this stuff's about. This stuff is serious.
So it's about self-defense. It's not so much about performance. Or
not much about performance.
No, not
if
at
you
all.
look at the Wing Chun, you asked about Chum Kiu, right? Wing Chun actually had three, three forms. The simplest one is called Xiu Lim Tao, little idea. The second one is Chum Kiu, searching the bridge. The third one is called Biu Ji, Biu Ji. And that's it, those are the three forms.
And then there's a dummy, a pole form, and a knife form. Each of these things they unlock the keys to a whole new kingdom. The first kingdom is shut up, get rid of your conscious mind, get rid of your ego, stand there in one spot, and I'll show you how your arms move in relationship to a line that runs through your center of gravity to the center of the earth. We call it the gravity line. Nobody, not even other Wing Chun men, talk about the gravity line. That's a concept from our way of doing Wing Chun, which Paul named Precision Wing Chun after he got to know about what it was we were doing here. And so you have several lines that are important, all right? Just briefly, no techniques or anything like that. It's just like you have a center of gravity that runs through your Tantium, and that center of gravity, if we draw it with a 3D character, an avatar, and put a line there, every place that the avatar moves, if I'm standing here like this and I move here, I have changed from a 50-50 weight on each foot to 60-40 on each foot. There are 8 of those positions where the weight is where your bones are lined up in the strongest that they can possibly be in reference to a bridge line, in reference to where the opponent is. There is no way, and I know after 50 years, there's no other way to line up to where your bones are as aligned along that line as they are in that stance. There's 8 of them.
But do you think
most Wing don't know this, but there's only 8 of them,
Is that a scientific thing that the Chinese had thought about, or is that you're unpacking what you think they believed the structural form was?
It's what we see them do, but nobody has talked about it really because they weren't thinking like that.
It's a good question that you ask, Crystal, because we did not invent it.
Yeah.
We discovered it. And the way, we discovered it, the form is like everybody do the same form, right? And then you look at it, what are the commonalities and how many sections can I break it into that have some common move? And then we say, wow, the guy who actually came up with the form is a genius. Because, they have all these different things, like, Chum Kiu, you find out about bridges, and how many ways to overcome the bridge, and then and then Greg basically articulated them. This is chapter 1 and chapter 2, and how do you actually do that? And it's not anything that we invented, but it's something that
was already there.
It's already there.
All we did was study it, and when you study something enough, the human brain has the capacity to cut out the unessentials and get down to the bare facts, And any sport, anything that you do in life, if you can keep track of your Tantium when you're doing it, then you can position that Tantium so that you can be in position where you could actually attack that. You could actually deliver some force on the person, or he can try to deliver it on you, but he's delivering it somewhere besides where you are, because you know where you are. He has no idea. right? He's just trying to get you, you know? And so
Well,
what
a
you
lot of
do is,
it sounds like it's a relationship between your perception of your surroundings. It's not just your inner power, even though that's important too, right?
it's
It's
more
really,
important, a perception of yourself,
huh?
right? And then that's Selim Tao. Okay, that's the first
What's
step.
the Chinese character of that?
小念頭
Oh, right.
Little-
You said that before, the little mind
Right.
thinking. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have time to learn Cantonese. I'm sorry.
No, but this is interesting because this is like a form of learning through your body, right? A lot of times, also because, coming back to the UH campus is we have an academic setting, and I think there's so much privilege around writing and academic work, and we don't privilege enough the body as a way of knowing. And I think through martial arts is you're presenting a form that has its own philosophy and ways of being that we underappreciate, and through your book you're actually kind of unpacking that and how we do that. Right. So I think, in our short time, maybe after a quick break, is we can come back and you can demonstrate a little bit of the forms, and our listeners can try to imagine how it's moved. And if not, people can look onto our Facebook page to see you actually demonstrating. How's that sound?
Yeah, I wanted to interject something, because what you talked about is just, natural. Why are we actually doing this? Is we actually see a lot of it has been lost over the years, and we wanted to kind of preserve it. And like you say, there's a depth of knowledge that not a lot of people, know about. And we, two old men, right? We wanted to kind of like, okay, how do we preserve it for the next generation? So we start out this journey by writing books, but then the next few steps would be like, okay, how do I, teach people who wants to learn? And that's why I actually started talking to you and say, hey, the knowledge is actually, you can actually make it to be a syllabus to be taught in a class or something. And that's why I say, hey, maybe, there's some platform, some forum that we can share this knowledge, whether it's through University of Hawaii or some other form.
Right.
But that's how come we are exploring that.
Well, let's hope that the people in the Chinese studies, ethnic studies, Asian studies departments are listening, because you think about it, why, I think the university offers things like Chinese literature or Chinese culture through films, things like that. So why can't we have this idea of learning culture through the form of martial arts, right? It just opens up another way.
Already done. The text is already there.
Right.
It's written like a textbook.
I would add that, because I'm in the performance studies, which is in the theater department, I would argue that this is also not performance to say, but the performative nature of this particular martial arts style is something that can also be integrated into the theatrical world, because let me just tell you, they have like all these trainings of combat theater is a huge thing, right? Of how to fall, like you do a Shakespearean play. How is that battle, and how do you train the actor's body to be a certain way, And that kind of movement is not just performative in terms of for the audience, but for yourself and your spatial awareness and the training of your own ways and abilities to move. And I think it's really, if we open up the idea of martial arts, it's really quite very interesting and important to incorporate some aspect into our lives, right? In the mornings, I don't know if you know, like early mornings when we did have non-virtual world at UH, I would drive through the campus and see Tai Chi being practiced in several locations. So there's an existence of some kind of practice. And I know it's not Wing Chun, but maybe we can build off of that. And maybe it's all connected somehow of our energies at UH with the energies all the way back to the history that you're trying to preserve and to create knowledge on, right? It's really, it's fascinating. Great. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and maybe you can show us a few moves.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome back to my conversation with Paul Chu and Greg Tupper about their new book, Combat Q. And they're going to be, this is so exciting, even though it's virtual, they're going to demonstrate a little bit of a setup of some self-defense kind of ways through this Wing Chun practice. But before we do that, and you're going to set us up, I just wanted to highlight that, you know, there has been an increasing tension in anti-Asian hate crimes around the country, obviously. Not so much in Hawaii, but there's been some very devastating and very troubling issues with the idea of the Asian body. And I wanted to address this in a way that I'm not saying we're encouraging people to say, okay, we all have to pick up some self-defense mode to protect ourselves, but to draw awareness to what's going on today and why there is this stigma and this stereotype against Asians. And by even having you unpack the history, this beautiful history of martial arts into our practices today is a way of kind of maybe dismantling those things. And I appreciate that. And I just wanted to draw attention to how people, I don't know why, you know, and I don't know if you have thoughts on this violence, but how do we, you know, how do we make sense of this kind of crazy violent world right now? Do you want to say anything about that before you enter this space?
I had some experience, and I don't know whether, well, you know, being picked on, and I think it's not necessarily racial. I don't know, but because I'm an old man and I'm weak, and then people want to, you know, pick on you, right? And then I had several encounters over in Chinatown, where, you know,
in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, and people would just like come to you. But the thing is that, you know, my advice is, okay, you know, look them back in the eye and don't, you know, like, you know, pretend that you don't see them, because that shows weakness and they will, you know, come attack you. You just kind of look them in the eye. And one of the things that we're going to try to demonstrate is like, you don't have to fight them physically, but you can put yourself in a position that they think twice about attacking you, because they don't see a lot of, you know, weak opening, and they can approach you this way, approach you that way, approach you that way. But then they say, hey, wait a minute, if I, you know, attack him that way, it's not a very safe position for themselves. And you can actually try to practice that. So I had, you know, a few encounters like that. One of the things that I have as an advice also as an old man is that, you know, the people who wanted to attack me, right? I also think twice about whether I would, you know, fight them back. And my motto is that if I don't have to, of course, I don't want to fight, because, you know, I'm an old guy, and, you know, I have a house, I have kids, I have
a family,
whatever.
right?
And then, you know, if I fight a low life, you know, you know, what do I gain by that, right? Even if I hurt him. So my motto is that I will always try to stay away until my life is threatened, until, you know, I can get injury, whatever. Then I would defend myself. Right. That, you know.
It's like that old lady in San Francisco Chinatown who was attacked, and she came back and.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get real.
Okay.
If you run into a violent person, you know, the thing that you need to do first of all in any type of self-defense is don't be there. Don't go places where that's going to happen. Don't, I mean, think, you know, don't drive through neighborhoods that you wouldn't walk through at night, you know. Don't, you know, take care of yourself by being aware of your surroundings, you know. It's not like, I mean, I've been in dozens of fights. And when I was younger, I used to make myself available for bullies. I was a bully hunter, you know, because I thought it was my job to protect people. You know, well, that was my problem, right? I don't have that problem anymore. Now that I'm older, I realize that the Chinese saying of anybody that fights is a person without ideas is really true. Because what happens when you fight is that you hurt somebody and you can get sued, You could kill them by accident, especially with Wing Chun. You know, you could accidentally put them away. Wow. You know, if you were afraid enough, you could anyway. So you want to not be there if you can. Oh, but I'm here, I'm stuck. Here comes somebody aggressive. And so we'll show you a little bit of a scenario. This is a little difficult to do, but like he'll make something up and I'll show you how to try it, how to position yourself so that, you know, you can not let on that you even know anything. And yet at the same time, if it goes too far, you start to see a knife come out or something like that, it gets serious fast, you know. But if it's still, he's still working his way up to it, maybe you can interrupt his confidence enough and get yourself out of the situation. That's what we're going to try to show here.
Okay, great.
Of course, you know, this is backed by a lot of skill. Okay, it's important to develop the skill too.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And then this demonstration is not like the traditional one. You say, okay, you know, if you punch me this way, I'm going to block you. I'm going to attack you that way. If you kick me this way, I'm going to block this way and attack you this way, right? I mean, those are nice for demonstration, but you know, I think this is more practical.
Yeah, because it doesn't happen ever the same way twice. Even if somebody's trying to attack you the same way twice, they don't know how. You know, they can't do the same. They can't actually do exactly the same thing twice, right?
Okay,
you know?
So your kind of your tactic is maybe avoidance or decentering that kind of confrontation, right?
Yeah, and diffusing it with your mouth, with your voice.
Okay,
you know?
So let's say if you were a girl, right? Would that make a difference in the way you approach this scenario?
That's an interesting question. The number one line of self-defense is know where you're going to run. I mean, for a woman, or a guy, if the guy is bigger than you and stuff like that, is to know where you're going to go, you know, like keep aware of your surroundings. As that starts happening, I'm looking around like, where's my exit, you know, and then I'm trying to work my way out of it and get closer to the exit. You need to know how to hide, you know, you need to know how to go towards where people are at, you know.
What if he's grabbed a hold of you already? How do you deal with that?
Then from there, remember, this is a life or death situation. You know, you got, you know, run, broken field running. You know, you just run as fast as you can and get away. Getting away is more important than winning, but it's a man's testosterone and ego that makes us have to win. Right? Women aren't like that. I mean, usually.
Right.
But
yeah.
Wow. So I get to teach women self-defense classes, and I do things like I'd put them in a car, you know, with me, and then I'd act like I'm going to drive them somewhere, and so we wouldn't actually be rolling. But then I'd say, you know, I'd have them try and get away from me, and sometimes they cut you up. They get into it, you know, and. Your claws or something and your teeth or something that can protect you if you have to.
Right.
You know?
Wow. Okay.
The thing is, most people are afraid to do it because, oh, he'll hurt me worse.
Yeah.
You bite his nose off, he's not going to hurt you worse. You got 10 seconds at least, 15 seconds you can run, you know? And
so you notice a lot of kind of that avoidance technique, like you said, to diffuse and to distract and to find ways to escape that situation. But can we bring it back to a more confrontational scenario where you're actually fighting? Like maybe can you show a little bit about your actual practice, your training? Okay. How do you develop, you know, girls, I have very weak upper body strength. How do you develop that strength and impact to actually
upper body strength thing? This is how much do you weigh? I don't want to ask that.
No, I'm like 110. Yeah.
Anyway, say you weigh 110 pounds, right? Then that 110 pounds, if you strike correctly, that 110 pounds will be delivered at the end of that punch. You know, does that mean you can hit as hard as somebody that has 185 pounds, 200 pounds? No, but it doesn't matter. Because after that, you've got just another one, right? Oh, sorry.
So you have to learn how to transfer that power to that place of impact.
With your bones, right? And from your tantium, it's your leg muscles that you're punching with, right? So when you go to do the Wing Chun punch is 99% of what Wing Chun fight ends at. You know, usually one Wing Chun punch and it's over with.
Yeah, you can use Paul.
But the thing is, thank you. No, but the Chinese saying is the lik chung dei hei, means that the force is from the ground. When they say ground, it's actually, you know, the whole ground will support you because, you know, Newton's law, right?
Right.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So say that a guy 200 pounds is running and he doesn't see a 2x4 and he runs right into it, right? There's a lot of impact there.
Yes, right.
That's the same thing that happens when a 110-pound person punches somebody. It's not so much the strength that's involved, it's the velocity that gives you force. And you only have 110 pounds to deliver, or 90 pounds, or whatever it is. And so, but if you deliver it with into the center line with a bone structure that's lined up, you will deliver all of the energy off of your thigh muscle, shooting your tantium forward towards him, your center of gravity forward towards him at a rate that will have a high impact. And the beauty about a Wing Chun punch is that it's not like, it's not like that. It's like, you know, and you do 1,000 of them a day when you first start. You know, well, some people do. We you know, we train hard.
No, that's one of the reasons I like Wing Chun is because the moves are very simple. It's basically the human reaction natural. None of this stuff is you know, that kind of stuff, right? I mean, that you see in a kung fu movie.
Yeah, right.
But
and that's not practical.
It's not practical, right? Because this guy is not going to stand here and let me punch him. He won't react, right? So the Wing Chun punch is the most direct one. Boom. And in fact, if you actually have just a one good punch, that's all you need to end the fight.
But that training process to prepare yourself and to have that. So what I'm hearing or trying to understand is that a lot of this is based on, you know, you mentioned this idea of a tree and the grounding and the structure of connecting from the top of your head to this grounding, and you're utilizing kind of a scientific knowledge in understanding the body and your positioning to how to construct your strength for self. I have one more question for you before we wrap is, you know, as for bodies, you know, we mentioned like maybe girls have a different way of having to maneuver, but you give me confidence that even like a lightweight like me, I can find a way to train to use my whatever I have in my strength to do something. But what about older people? You mentioned you made fun of yourselves for your age, but for aging bodies, how do we approach this art form? And are there limitations or are there expectations? Is this a mind over matter thing? How do we kind of allow people in different phases of life and aging, you know, processes to approach this?
It's not by learning techniques. It's by understanding how to move your body in such a way that you're not in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we have a very systematic way of teaching how to move so that you feel, you know, from the other person where it's not safe and where it is, you know, where I'm not say I don't feel safe here, right? But I feel plenty safe right here. He tries to reach me with it.
Remember, a punch is powerful only in this direction, right?
Wow.
And so we show you exactly how to position yourself in relation to the other person's gravity line with lines and avatars, not with us that could be making mistakes, especially at our age, but by mathematically aligning the relationships involved, getting you to see the relationships and giving you the footwork to move from one position to the next.
That's great. Yeah. And I think just to pull back and wrap up is that it's really a great analogy to your larger approach in life, right? It's our positioning. It's your spatial awareness and your relationships with people and how you avoid
Exactly.
certain contact or want it, right? So I'm going to leave people with that. And I think it's really great that you shared a little bit of your demonstration. You shared the history of Wing Chun, and you shared your passion for it and how it came about, so that you came about to create this book. So congratulations on this new book. Hopefully, maybe we can see your training in the near future around UH or anywhere else in the world, because we need to share this knowledge. Thank you so much. This is Paul Chu and Greg Tupper. Thank you.
Thank you.